I think broadly speaking, what the pandemic risks doing is essentially exacerbating some very unbalanced systems and ecosystems that were already in place in ordinary times, and oftentimes sort of biased more towards men. So if we look at the world of work for women, for instance, sort of stepping back a little bit, there was an analysis by Oxfam saying that actually if women earned minimum wage for the unpaid work they do around the house and caring for relatives, they would have actually earned something like $11 trillion in 2019. So if we're starting from that base and then adding on the fact that, as Katrina mentioned, this is really a crisis that impacts a lot of female workers because the sectors, obviously, that have a lot of women employed in them and that are in trouble are hospitality, services. Also, for instance, some analysts point to public relations. In addition to that, a huge number of nurses, about 8 out of 10, if I'm not mistaken, are actually women. So obviously, these are the frontline workers that are most at risk. So adding all of this difficulty on top of a situation where women were already taking on a lot of the burden in terms of work at home that remains unpaid, that really runs the risk of creating a more imbalanced system stacked up potentially against women. And the problem is that already in ordinary times, the domestic unpaid labor was already pushing potentially women out of work or forcing them, to go part-time, taking pay cuts, potentially even stunting their career paths. And the big risk is that this pandemic will essentially potentially push women out of the labor force further and therefore increasingly eroding their own financial security.